Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to discuss the highlights from all of the reading that I did in spring 2021. I want to tell you about the Standout books that I really enjoyed, books that I would recommend, but that I haven't spoken about in any other video here on this channel. I want to bring your attention to all the written reviews that I've had appear over the previous quarter, and I also want to tell you about the biggest disappointments of this season. So far in 2021, I've been doing these highlight videos sort of in the place of wrap-up videos. If you didn't know this, in 2021, I'm taking a break from doing wrap-ups and TBRs. I love those videos, but I was finding it was all getting to be a little bit too much for me. I had done wrap-ups and TBRs for 6 years straight without missing a month. And with my schedule and with all of my reviewing responsibilities, because I am a working freelance book reviewer now, it was getting to just be a lot. What books to talk about when. I have to hold off on talking about a book until its written review appears. It was a lot of juggling. It was very mentally taxing. So instead, just for this year, I decided to do highlights videos instead. I have heard from a lot of you that you miss the wrap-up videos, and to be completely honest with you, I miss them too. I always love doing wrap-up videos. But just for this year, I need to take a breather from them. I just needed to look out for me for the year of 2021 while I continue to try to get this book reviewing career off of the ground. So just for this year, at least I think it's going to be just for this year, I'm doing these highlight videos. So I have an opportunity to talk to you about some of the reading that I've done since the last highlights video. I'm still continuing to read a number of books every single month, as you would imagine. That has definitely not changed in my life, so this is a really good opportunity for me to sit down and talk to you about some of the books that I've read. These videos, at least partially, for me, scratch that wrap-up itch. Because I love to talk about happy things, let's start off by talking about the standouts. There are 3 standout books that I want to talk to you about in today's video, and the first one is one that I really enjoyed, but not quite enough to give its own review here on this channel as I originally thought I was going to. It's called The Narrowboat Summer by Anne Youngson. This novel follows 3 different middle-aged women. 2 of them have just recently undergone dramatic life changes. One of them left a job that she was at for decades, and the other woman just recently left her husband. Well, those 2 women meet each other in the same moment that they meet the 3rd woman who's involved in this situation. That woman lives aboard a narrowboat that travels along England's canals. Shortly after the 3 women meet, the narrowboat dweller reveals to the other 2 women that she's dealing with a very serious health problem. I think it's safe to assume that it's cancer, and that she needs to go get it looked at, but she doesn't have the time or the resources to go do that. She's promised the narrowboat up at a repair shop at a certain point in the near future. She has to look after this boat. There's no one else to tend it, and she also doesn't have any non-floating place to reside while she's undergoing treatment. Well, the 2 women that she just met have nowhere to be. They have no commitments anymore when previously they did. So they decide that they're going to swap places with her. They will live aboard the narrowboat and take it to the repair shop while the narrowboat dweller lives in one of their apartments and goes and gets treatment. Starting off, I really loved this book, and I thought it had so much potential because it was so reminiscent of The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. These types of books where women are taking their lives into their own hands, they're pushing themselves outside of their comfort zones by doing something sort of dramatic, but also rather tame at the same time. They're doing something different and forcing themselves to think about what they truly want out of their lives. And that element more or less stays put throughout the book, because you can definitely tell by the end of it, these 2 women who had just recently made pretty drastic decisions about their lives and their futures, removing all the worries and concerns that plagued their previous lives, you can tell that by the time they get back to dry land, they know more what they actually want out of life. But the main thing I didn't like about this book, and the ultimate reason why I decided not to give it its own review here on this channel, is that I felt the book focused far too much on the people that they met along the canals. The book became about those people's dramas way more than it was about the internal growth of the two women, which was really what I was looking for out of the book. And I feel that's kind of what was promised by the opening section. That being said, this was a super cute, really relaxing, comforting read. I particularly liked the dynamic between the two women who took over the narrowboat and the woman who's back in the apartment receiving treatment, the woman who owns the narrowboat. They have a really funny dynamic. The woman who owns the narrowboat is kind of a take no prisoners, put up with none of your crap type of woman, and she's really snarky. She is taking these two women up on a favor, and yet she acts as though they're indebted to her in some way. It's hilarious. So for those reasons, I do really recommend this book, even though it didn't go quite as far as I wanted it to. But the next standout is one that I loved. 100% a 5-star read. Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. This will probably go on to be one of the year's biggest nonfiction books, and for a good reason. This nonfiction book looks at the Sackler family, the owners of Purdue Pharma, which is the company that created and sells the highly addictive painkiller OxyContin. This book starts off almost as a biography of the oldest Sackler brother, Arthur, and it talks a lot about the ingenious but also insidious marketing tactics that he pioneered. And then later on in the book, the majority of the book looks at then how Purdue Pharma went into the hands of his two younger brothers, Mortimer and Raymond. Arthur's wealth bought them Purdue Pharma. He gave them that company, but his legacy lives on in the way that the company, Purdue Pharma, and really this family used those marketing tactics to peddle highly addictive drugs to the masses. To put it bluntly, this family, this company, lied about what OxyContin does and does not do. They overstated how long a single dose lasts. They claimed that it would last for 12 hours, specifically to appeal to people dealing with chronic pain. People who have pain is an everyday reality. Every single day, they have to be on pain medication. They don't want to have to re-up every 4 hours. They don't want to continue to take pills every 4 hours. So of course, a pill that's advertised as having a staggered release in your system, you just take one pill and you're good for 12 hours. Of course that's appealing. But then the company was understating how addictive this medicine is. They said it wasn't addictive. An opiate? Not addictive? Okay. In my humble opinion, I find this family and their practices beyond sickening, just disgusting. The fact that people just trying to deal with chronic pain, just trying to numb the pain to get through their days, to get through a shift at work, now have to deal with being addicts for the rest of their lives because they were told not to worry about it. They became addicted. Now they have to deal with that addiction, with the stigma from society that comes with addiction, as though someone's morally inferior because they're dealing with addiction. They were just trying to make it through their day, and now they're addicts because this company wanted to make money off of them. It makes my skin crawl. This story is fascinating, albeit infuriating. There were moments within this book that my jaw just hit the floor. I just could not believe what I was reading, especially with the things dealing with the way specifically Arthur dealt with the art world, how he wanted his name all over everything, but then the family itself wanted to live in the shadows regarding what they actually did, which kind of leads me to believe that they knew what they were doing is shady. But I digress. It's a fantastic book because Patrick Radden Keefe does just a tremendous job with it. I can see why there's so much hype around his work. I'm going to need to go and read Say Nothing now. I can't believe I haven't read that yet, especially because it's my friend Jill over at the Book Bully's favorite nonfiction book. And she's actually the one who convinced me to pick this up with the urgency that I did. I normally would wait a little while until a book's hype dies down a little bit, especially since I hadn't read this author's previous work. I wasn't intending to pick it up right after release, but Jill was so anticipating this book's release. She was so hyping it up that I just had to go and read it myself. Her enthusiasm is absolutely infectious. So if I haven't convinced you to read this book, Jill definitely will. She did a great review of this book that I'll link for you in the description box below and up in the cards. Now, the last standout that I want to discuss in this video is one from my NetGalley backlog that I am desperately trying to clear out this year. That book is Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. This is a novel set in the Victorian era, but it does have some magical elements in it. The main character is Bridie Devine. Such a fantastic name. She's a private detective / private investigator who specializes in finding lost children who are unique in some kind of a way. Her last case, we're told, didn't go so well, so she's actually a little bit surprised when someone new wants to hire her. Bridie is hired to find the secret daughter of a society gentleman. This little girl is said to have supernatural looks and abilities, but she's been kidnapped and her recently hired nanny went missing alongside of her, leading everyone to believe that this nanny probably had something to do with it. So Bridie is on the case and she has two people to help her. Well, she has one person and one ghost. The person is her 7-foot-tall maid, Cora, who is very protective of Bridie. And then the ghost is the spirit of a former boxer who says that he knows Bridie from back in the day, but Bridie has no memory of him. The two of them have a very friendly, almost kind of flirty relationship. So as we're on the case with Bridie, we're learning more about the case itself, but we're also learning more about Bridie's background, which actually has a lot to do with this case. You wouldn't really expect that a Gothic novel set in the Victorian era with supernatural and mystery elements thrown in there would end up being a leisurely, relaxing read, but that's exactly what this was. I had so much fun just spending time within this book. I loved getting lost in the worlds. That's the main reason why I didn't really care when this novel dragged on a little bit longer than it needed to, frankly. I was just having too good of a time with it to care. So if you're looking for a darker read as we, here in the Northern Hemisphere, edge closer to the fall / autumn season, I think you should definitely consider this one. I could see this book being the perfect late September, early October read to kind of prime you for spooky season, if that's your kind of thing. I really enjoyed this book, way more than I was expecting to. But now on to all the books that I wrote written reviews of, all of which were published or appeared in the previous quarter. The first one that appeared was a review I did of The Liar's Dictionary by Ellie Williams. I wrote about this one for Harvard Review. This is a really unique dual narrative story in which an intern at a dying dictionary company is forced to go through old dictionary entries to comb through them and try to find which ones are fake. It's been revealed that a lot of the entries in that dictionary are fake. And those entries were put in there by a person or persons unknown, but there's a little bit of dramatic irony going on because we, the reader, know who put those fake entries or mount weasels into the dictionary because the second narrative in this book belongs to that person. This book is absolutely one for word nerds, so I'll tell you right up front, if you don't like things to be wordy, if you're not the type of person to break out into a grin after hearing a particularly great play on words, then you might not enjoy this one as much as I did, but I really did like this one. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on it, my review will be linked in the description box below. It was very fun to write. But then I wrote 2 duo reviews for the Christian Science Monitor, 2 reviews with 2 books apiece, so total 4 books. The first duo was a baseball duo, and the 2 books I focused on were Comeback Season by Cam Perrin and Our Team by Luke Eplin. Comeback Season is a really heartwarming tale of how Cam Perrin, in his even younger years, he is still a very young man, he got in contact with former players from the Negro Leagues because he was fascinated by the Negro Leagues. He wanted to talk to them. He also was seeking autographs from them, but he ended up developing friendships with a lot of them and actually helped to put former players back in touch with one another, often after years of no contact. And then Our Team by Luke Eplin is the story of the 1948 World Series win by the Cleveland Indians, but it's just as much about baseball's desegregation beginning in the 1940s. because Larry Doby, the second ever Black player to play for the majors, was playing for the Indians when they won. And he signed with the Indians mere months after Jackie Robinson signed with the Dodgers. And when they were playing in the World Series, Satchel Paige, star of the Negro Leagues, was also playing for the Indians. Comeback season was good. It was definitely worth reading, but Our Team by Luke Eplin was phenomenal. Masterfully written, fantastic reading, important reading, just something I definitely recommend. And since I said that, I also want to say that I do hear from some of you sometimes when you say things like, well, it's a sports book, it's not really for me. I have a personal challenge for you if you feel that way. If you are someone who just enjoys history books, you like reading about history, I challenge you to pick up Our Team by Luke Eplin and tell me you don't love it. I think you will love it. And I think you'll then realize that you're missing out if you're not reading some sports history books, because I felt something similar a long time ago, that I wouldn't really be into sports books, and now I can't get enough. And I think the same thing could happen to you. And I encourage you to start with Our Team. If you take me up on that challenge, let me know in this comment section or any of my other comment sections. I would love to hear from you. But if you'd like to hear more about one or both of these books, my review in the Monitor will be linked in the description box below. And then the other duo review that I wrote for the Monitor focused on 2 adventure stories. The first one was called The Ride of Her Life by Elizabeth Letts, and the second one was Bicycling with Butterflies by Sarah Dykman. The Ride of Her Life focused on a woman in her 60s who in the 1950s decided to cross the United States on horseback, traveling from the state of Maine all the way over to California. She had received a death sentence and she wanted to live out the rest of her days in California, but didn't have any other way to get there. So she went on horseback. And then Bicycling with Butterflies focuses on a woman, a cyclist, an activist who decided to follow the monarch migration from where they overwinter down in Mexico all the way north up into Canada and then the whole way back again. Both of these were really good. I definitely preferred Bicycling with Butterflies, obviously, because I love natural history so much. But if you'd like to hear more about both of these books, I will link my review in the description box below. But now let's talk about the 2 letdowns from this quarter. One of them was Bleaker House by Nell Stevens, which is a book I was really looking forward to reading. I buddy read this one with Fianna, who used to have a booktube channel. It doesn't appear that she does anymore, but I'll link her Goodreads down below if you want to connect with her there. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, neither one of us really liked this. This book is a really weird mixture of fiction and nonfiction. There are elements of memoir, there are some short story pieces, there are fragments of a novel. This author had a truly spectacular opportunity through her graduate program. They allowed students through this program to travel anywhere in the world that they wanted for a period of time, and all of their costs would be covered. That is an amazing opportunity. And this author squandered it because she chose to go, for ludicrous reasons, to the Falkland Islands at the edge of the earth. Not particularly hospitable. She wouldn't be able to really talk to anyone, experience any culture. She just wanted to live in complete isolation because she had this romantic idea that only if she removed all of life's distractions, she would truly be able to write her novel. So in the book, you jump around between the memoir portions where she talks about this trip to the Falklands, specifically Bleaker Island, and talks about her time living there. But then she also talks about times earlier on in her life before she took this trip. And then you do have the works of fiction, including, I'm assuming, the novel she was writing while she was there, stitched into everything at really weird times. It became so clear to me as I was reading this book that this work that I was holding in my hands, Bleaker House, was an attempt to salvage what was absolutely a squandered opportunity. She took the things that she wrote while she was there and then wrote about the experience and then stitches them together, making a really weird looking quilt, and then presents it as though it was an intentional, well thought out product when it was none of those things. This is one of those books, kind of like Avoid the Day by Jay Kirk, which I read for Nonfiction November last year, where they're marketed as being genre bending or unique because there are so many different things going on within the book at the exact same time. But let me say this. There's a difference between genre bending and confused. There's a difference between genre bending and trying to force unrelated things together just because neither one of those things can fill out a whole book. If your blend of genres, or in this case fiction and nonfiction, has purpose, then it will be harmonious on the palate. But in this case, it was a garbled, inedible mess. It was also entirely self-serving. I didn't like it. I will say, though, for all of its flaws, I did give Bleaker House 2 stars instead of 1 star because I really liked the writing. I think she can really write. I was not so generous to the second letdown of this quarter. It was my first 1-star read of 2021. I gave that 1 star to The Cave Dwellers by Christina McDowell. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the second quarter of 2021. I love this cover. I thought this book had such promise, and I just don't know that I could have been more disappointed. This is a really poorly executed attempted takedown of Washington, D.C. society. The whole thing starts off when we see the brutal murders of a well-to-do family within Washington, D.C. society, and you would think that that would imply that we would get some sort of an investigation into their murders. There would be a mystery element to this book. And there was none of that. Instead, we focus on a large cast of vapid and uninteresting characters, including socialites and social climbers, philandering politicians, and high school students fully capitalizing off of their wealth and privilege. If you're anything like me, then you enjoy a little bit of nuance in your fiction. You know, a loaded piece of body language, a line of dialogue that could have multiple interpretations. It's really fun to think about. Well, if you are like me in that way, then you've come to the wrong place with this novel. I believe in my Goodreads review, I called it as subtle as a sledgehammer, and I stand by that, because every single thought this author wants you to have is written down on the page. There is no room for interpretation. There is no room for you to have your own opinions about any of these people. Everything has already been thought out for you. I find these kinds of books insulting to my intelligence. So yeah, this book is my one and only 1-star read of the year so far. I'm truly hoping it does not receive company. I'm just glad that even though I hated this book, it wasn't the kind of book to make me angry. It seems like there's always one book per year that just makes my blood boil. It just infuriates me. And last year, I had 2 of those books in a single year when normally it's just 1. I hope that means that I'll be spared this year. If I did 2 last year, maybe this will be a year in which no books make me that angry. I truly hope so, for the sake of my blood pressure. So those were the highlights of the reading that I did in the second quarter of 2021. There were a number of books that I didn't mention in this video, largely because I already reviewed them here on this channel, so I didn't want to mention them again here. However, if you want to get a sense of where everything stands with me, since we're now done incredibly with the first 6 months of the year, the very next video I'm going to be posting on this channel is my best books of the year so far, so keep an eye out for that. But if you would like to keep more up to date with what I'm reading and writing about kind of in the moment that it's happening, you're welcome to follow me on Goodreads and on Instagram. I post pretty regularly on both of those platforms. So if you would like to know what my thoughts are on the books that I'm reading before I have the chance to sit down and make a video like this, those are the best places to do it. The links to those profiles and everywhere else you can find me on the internet will be in the description box below, and any comments or questions you may have can, of course, go in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.